Ransomware is the old thing. Human-operated ransomware or HOR.
I was waiting. If you weren't going to do it, I was.
HOR is...
It's either that or you're playing basketball. Didn't you always love when you got to that part of playing the game of horse?
Yeah.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
This is Laurie with Gastro Associates in Gainesville, Georgia, and you're listening to Help Me with HIPAA podcast.
Thank you for the intro. I am David Sims with HIPAA for MSPs and Security First IT, and joining me is Donna Grindle from Carden, all the way down in Georgia.
That's right, darling.
Home of the cybersecurity events.
I know, right? And it's a good thing they built a cybersecurity center over in Augusta because, we need it down here.
Mm-hmm. You do.
I know. It's sad, but true.
Yep.
We're a petri dish in so many ways.
A peachy dish.
Peachy dish. Oh, jeez.
So today we're going to talk about something we've never talked about before. We're going to talk about ransomware.
No, I'm so sick of talking about it. We got to give it a new name because we're going to talk about today why it's not really what we know to be ransomware anymore.
It is always a changing.
Yeah. Which
is funny because I was doing a talk the other day with a webinar group, and it was the American Institute of Healthcare Compliance. Shout out to Tracy, by the way, one of the fans of the podcast that was joining in attendance.
Hey, Tracy.
I know. So, but we were talking about, security awareness training and how people have, the annual security awareness training. And I'm like, dude, the ransomware has changed 50 times by then. If you're doing security awareness training once a year, then you're so far behind, you'll never catch up. Mm-hmm. There's just no way. I mean, there are people whose job is to do nothing but keep up with this stuff. So,
yeah,
that would be kind of scary if, your doctor was like, "Yeah, I make sure I get training for 1 hour a year."
Well, remember, there's also people whose job it is to do nothing but find ways around all the things you already know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. It's reminds me back in the day when I was a kid before the internet. It was there was a similar situation with radar detectors. So you'd buy the radar detector, and it's like 6 months later the police would have a new band or something they were using, and so now your radar detector, and radar detector was no good anymore. So you had to buy another new radar detector. So there was always a fight back and forth between the technology of the radar and the technology of the radar detector.
Yeah, well, the companies were making both, so.
I know. And of course, there are, people who think that the people that are making antivirus programs are also making the viruses.
Yeah.
So, who knows?
Who knows?
But we won't be talking about that part today, but we will be talking about a lot of other things about the new ransomware concerns and some studies that have come out that talk about the types of ransomware and how much it costs and how they were getting in, and they're changing their tactics, and they're changing them frequently,
rapidly.
Yeah, and which is another thing when you have an IT company and they're like, "We have you protected." Okay, are you keeping up with how things are changing though? Because how you're protecting me today is not going to be very effective 6 months from now.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that an awful lot where people are still doing the same thing they did 5 years ago, the same software they had 5 years ago, same procedures. I mean, nothing's changed. And I'm like, yeah.
That's when when you ask, what do you do for security? Well, we have antivirus. We don't have anything to worry about.
Yeah. We follow best practices. I love that one.
Yeah. Whose?
I almost want to go, can you name one?
I know. Could you? Yeah. Give me an example of one, because if you can't, anyway.
That's fun. So anyway, before we dive into that, we do have some boot camp stuff. I don't know that we've made a decision on whether to go virtual or viral or visceral or what we're doing with it.
We're still looking into it, and there's a lot of discussion going back and forth. It's one thing if you are having an event like this and you're not in healthcare, right?
Mm-hmm. Because
when you're just worried about can you have an event in the fall, there's a lot of areas and a lot of things to consider. But if you are in healthcare, you have to worry about the fact that if there is an event, the healthcare people will need to make sure their people are nearby, available, and healthy. So they don't want them traveling. They don't want them out of the office for a week. So we do have an additional layer of concern, and we're trying to determine how we're going to walk that line.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of doing one in Atlanta and one on the West Coast, we do one big virtual one where it's like going to a conference on a webcast, but we're going to make our own rules, people.
Of course we are.
We're going to make the rules, and you got to commit if you're going to do this.
We're going to have to send out a thing that says, make sure you purchase these items beforehand. Have your sandwich ready. Have your drinks ready. Have your afternoon nightcap ready.
That's right. That's right. We're going to give you, here are the things that you have to do. And we're trying to figure out if we can do the HIPAA boot camp experience virtually.
That's going to be tough.
Yes.
Going to be tough.
Yeah. And do it essentially the same thing with, me and David in a room in front of a video camera.
Yeah. I'll try not to forget my clothes again.
Oh, please don't.
Since you bring it up every single time we have a boot camp.
If I don't, Krista does. Yeah, she loves that. But then you get to go back to her. At least when you show up for work, you bring a computer.
I know. I mean, I can sit there and work with no shirt.
It's just not pleasant for the rest of us. So,
probably not, but.
You sitting around stealing everybody's computer. Different ballgame there, Critter.
Yeah, right. Critter.
She loves it when I do this. I'll get a nasty text when she listens to this one. Shout out to you, Krista. It's great working with me all these years. 20 years. 20 years. She suffered.
Yeah, she ought to be getting about into the end of her sentence.
Thank you. But we do appreciate Miss Krista.
All right. So we will let you know what we decide, when we decide it.
And how we're going to do it. As it stands right now, it's a big... We still have the date scheduled for August and September. But, it's a time where we may just give it a try and see how it goes. But anyway, we're there. And if you have an opinion, feel free to reach out to us via social media, contact at all the millions of ways people reach us.
Yeah. Or you can just you can just stir Donna up on social media. And if you want to know how to do that, just advertise your company
as a comment to ours.
As a comment to our post on the podcast.
I'd had it. I had it. I'd been polite long enough, people. Polite long enough. And it's in the Twitter feed. If you need to see it, it's there.
Yeah. But yeah, try to not practice your douchebaggery and use our feed to promote your product.
And we don't have to worry about it because I'm sure the sales guy that kept posting about his product in our comments never even listens to the podcast. So
that's true. Probably not.
All right. That's why I told him he should listen to one before he posts again.
Maybe he'll listen to this one.
Okay. So now, what else we got to do?
Nothing unless you want to take a break.
Oh, that's, we've been going back and forth on that. So we could take a break.
All right, cool. So here's a word from our sponsors. Does your business work with medical practices? As a medical practice business associate, do you realize that if you have access to patient information, you have to follow the same HIPAA rules as your client? Call Carden today at 678-292-5001 so they can assess your privacy and security practices to help ensure you are protected and prepared. Visit cardenhq.com to learn more.
2/3 of small businesses that experience a cybersecurity breach end up closing their doors within 6 months. Cybercriminals are targeting your practice and coming after your most sensitive data. Visit us online and schedule a time to talk about what you can do to protect yourself, your patients, and your practice. Our website is securityfirstit.com. That's securityfirstit.com.
All right, we are back live. Yes, this is a live recording. It's recorded before a live studio audience. All right, so let's talk about some new ransomware concerns because, we can't stop talking about it. It's so awesome.
I know. I don't know about you, but I'm sick of it.
Yeah.
But we just did a episode like in January about, ransomware. It's new. And now it's even going further and getting more tricky.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the bottom line that you need to know is that if you're in healthcare and you're hit by ransomware, you're almost certainly at this point going to need to report to HHS.
Yeah. So
I'm seeing no way whatsoever around it anymore as far as because you are being infiltrated almost certainly.
So maybe we should title this episode New and Improved Ransomware Concerns. If I'm their marketing director of the ransomware people,
mm-hmm.
I am now considered new and improved.
No. It needs a whole new name, and maybe we'll come up with it while we're here.
Ransom Scare.
No, that's not going to work. No.
It don't work.
We need to just get rid of ransom because it's really a tiny little piece of what is now. Ransomware is the indicator
mm-hmm.
of at least a portion of an ongoing attack.
What about breachware?
Ah, there you go.
What about your screwedware?
This ain't going to be pretty, people. But... So here's the thing, and first we need to let's just we'll point out that the pandemic has opened up so many new ways for them to attack,
mm-hmm.
and we can feel certain that even if you're saying I haven't had a ransomware attack during the pandemic, that means nothing, because
mm-hmm.
again, that will be an element of the attack, and what I'm concerned about. Is we just talked about in the last episode about rethinking your threats, right? And all of the different things and the things that have opened up and the problems that are out there. This is on the hiccup list as being a threat long before, and now it's an even worse threat, at least in my opinion.
Yep.
But who am I?
You're Donna Grindle. I know you're getting old, but stick with us.
I know, right? Oh, yeah, I'm me. But this has changed everything. We were already in a cycle of change at the end of the year. The last quarter of 2020 or 2019, everything changed. The first quarter of 2020, it's even worse.
Yep.
So let's talk first in the most basic sense, what we used to consider a ransomware attack involved somehow software being loaded and then it would be run and it would lock everything up and encrypt it. And you were supposed to pay money to get the encryption keys or you were stored.
Right.
And that pretty much worked
mm-hmm.
for years, kind of up through maybe, I don't know, 2018-ish, somewhere in there. They started to see, wait a minute, we went to Bitcoin And now we're starting to see that, no, it's not as lucrative as these attacks. So let's make them better. And everybody thought that they were, busy doing something else in 2018. I'm not sure that they weren't in a development cycle that we didn't know about.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, but the old way was simply, and everybody would say, you get those questions in the webinars and stuff, and people would ask us, how do we know if we've had a ransomware attack? And everybody's answer is always, because you're encrypted. You'll get, it's on the screen that your files you can't get access to, nothing's working. That's how you know. And that's why I think we need to change the name of what we're calling this.
Right.
Because that's just no longer the case. Because what happens now is we have what used to, I don't know, the majority of the ways that we would see things, it was people falling for phishing and opening a piece of malware in an attachment, right?
Right.
The old spray and pray version.
Mm-hmm.
And they made good money off of that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so much so that some people were like, hey, we've made so much money, we're just shutting it down.
Yeah, some people did, but they were lying because they're criminals.
Well, we had another announcement just this week. Was the Shade ransomware.
Mm-hmm.
They released like 750,000 encryption keys, and they're like, yeah, we're done with this one.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think maybe they were almost caught.
Yeah, okay.
So they bailed. But that's just that old way of supposedly doing things. But now we have human-operated ransomware. And maybe that's the difference, is ransomware is the old thing. Human-operated ransomware, or HOR.
I was waiting. If you weren't going to do it, I was.
HOR is...
It's either that or you're playing basketball. Didn't you always love when you got to that part of playing the game of horse?
Yeah. Anyways, it's human-operated ransomware. And no, we did not plan that at all. This is how it works for us. There's no script. We're just reading the note that says, look, here's an article that calls it human-operated ransomware. Now,
you've had a horror attack.
It'll make things interesting again.
It will. But yeah, now I'm going to start seeing that showing up in my ticketing system for my technicians.
But that's where this one's different. That's why it's changed. And there was a little bit of this going on when the RDP brute force attacks would happen. But mostly they would get in until they got in. They would, send a ton of usernames and passwords to the RDP port that they would see until they got in. And then they would just kind of look around a little bit until they found a way to launch the ransomware. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
But, because they weren't into anything but just launch the ransomware and make some money.
Right.
Now, they're in there. They're in there messing around, doing a whole lot of other stuff. They're doing reconnaissance. They're using your systems for attacking others, for sending spam. What else?
Well, they're making sure that, they go in and delete sometimes or turn off backups and stuff.
Right.
And of course, if you've got something to where your backups haven't run for 90 days, and then, then on the way out, they launch your attack and you're like, oh, I'll just restore from last week's backup. Well, guess what? Last week's backup's not there.
Yeah. They let it run so that you don't get an alert, and then they delete it.
Yeah.
Because they're monitoring it. So they'll hang out in there as long as you have backups.
Yeah. And they'll take the data so they can use that against you. So, hey, if you don't pay, I'll release the data online. Which
is what we were bringing up at the beginning of the year. That's what changed.
Mm-hmm.
Is they're saying now, you know what? We're going to take the data. But they take the data before they even launch the attack to encrypt it. It's booked by, it's gone. You have a data breach. Period. Done.
Mm-hmm.
Over. By the time you see the ransomware, it's over. You have a data breach. There's not.
We've mentioned this several times that, used to a ransomware attack, you knew you had it and you knew that was the beginning of the problem. Right. Now, you have it, but it is the end of the problem and in the beginning of your nightmare.
Yeah, you're seeing them on the way out the door, but they're not even going out the door.
Right.
Used to, that was it. And that's even more of the change is they're staying in.
Yeah, now they're just slamming the door and then walking back in and,
going around to the same back door they got in before.
Yeah, it's like, I'm leaving, bye. Slam the door and you just stay in there and shh, be quiet.
So, just watching everybody go by. Nobody even notices them. They just, one of those where they blend in, where the artists, they paint themselves exactly like the mural.
Yeah.
And then they step out of it and it freaks everybody out. That's exactly what it looks like, really. You think about it. But Microsoft came out in the last few weeks with an article about 10 ransomware strains being used in advanced attacks. And in that, they were covering how these new attacks are rolling out and all the different ones that you're seeing. And one is called Robin Hood. It's got 2 B's, like the hippopotamus people.
Yeah. Maybe somebody will create a hippopotamus attack.
Oh, no, please don't. No.
I know Anonymous is listening.
Anyway, so we're moving forward. The example that one of the articles that was reviewing the whole thing, I think Bleeping Computer had a screenshot that showed the Robin Hood attack. And, used to, it was really rudimentary put together. Not anymore. No, it's very basic. What has happened? What can I do? It's like going to a knowledge base article.
Yeah.
And they give you 2 options. 2.
Yeah. Very nice of them.
Yeah. You can pay us one of 2 ways. One, what was it? 3 Bitcoins per device.
Yep. 3 Bitcoins per device. And a Bitcoin, as of today is, like $8,700, something like that?
$8,767.95.
Yep. 3 of those.
3 of those per machine.
Over 24K.
Right. Or option number 2, you could pay us 13 Bitcoin. So apparently they max out on what they're going after. You can pay us 13 Bitcoin for all of your devices.
Ain't that nice of them?
Yeah.
So they flat rate it.
Yeah. They flat rate it. It tops out. So you have 2 options. And that would, at that today's rate, 13 Bitcoin is $113,983.35. Or we'll just call it $114,000.
Mm-hmm. So that would be equivalent of just over 4 computers.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. That's it, where it tops out.
Not a big network.
No, not at all. So don't think that I'm too small or all of that. That's really gone out the window with all of the remote access now.
Mm-hmm.
If you are able to access your stuff remotely, it's all over. You're not too small. That ties in with another article that says that Coveware did an analysis between Q4 2019 and Q1 2020, looking at the average ransom payment businesses are doing. Because remember, 2019 is when businesses became the new focus. It was not the focus prior. And now they aim at it. And Ryuk was one of the first ones that said, not only are we going to go after business, but we're going to ask for big bucks.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when we saw that in the beginning of 2019 and we did an episode on it, it was terrifying at the time, and it's worse than it ever was.
Yeah, they know everybody's got some PPP money.
Mm-hmm. They watch it for a lot of things right now. So when they compared, this is the top 3 ransomware types. One of them, Phobos. I don't I don't know how to.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah, I didn't know that one. But they went up in one quarter. They had made $12,000 fourth quarter 2019, and first quarter 2020 just under $16,000. That's in their quarter, their income. All they did was ransom things.
Okay.
So Denokibi, which is just fun to say,
Mm-hmm.
they went from a little over 71,000 to let's go 328,000 in a quarter.
That's a nice raise.
Yes, but that is nothing compared to what the real folks have done,
which
just under 780,000 in Q4 2019. So that blows Denokibi out of the water for 2020 even. But they've almost doubled.
Wow.
1,340,000, just a little less than that in Q2, that they've been able to ascertain by monitoring Bitcoin wallets and these kind of things.
So in one quarter,
yeah,
they've doubled their income
from the previous quarter. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean,
in the midst of a pandemic.
Yeah, I would think they're just about to the point now where you need to put them on the S&P 500. Fastest growing small companies.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things we talked about before. This is its own economy now.
Yeah.
You know, the cybercrime industry is a multi-billion, trillion-dollar. I think they've gotten it now. You could combine like all these big companies and they would still make more than them in that one cybercrime item there. But that's telling us that asking for 113,000, they're going with, what will the market bear?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's right at the average that they're finding per incident. That's a lot of 100 and something to get to, 1.4 million.
Yeah.
And, the other group thought they were doing well because they went up to almost 16.
Mm-hmm.
These guys have been at it now since 2018 at least. And, before, if we go back to the concept that we're talking about here, that would have been they launched the ransomware, they're done. But now, the human operated, I couldn't do it. The human operated ransomware is different because the ransomware attack itself is simply an element of what is actually going on. It is not the objective. It's just one of the many objectives.
Mm-hmm.
So it's time for us to explain something that's been out there for a while, clearly, but it's important that I think everybody starts to understand what's happening because they just see ransomware as what it's always been. We need to teach them how that's happening today is very different than before. So if, you got your propeller hat on, great, let's work together on finding ways to explain this. But until people understand this, I don't think we're going to make any progress getting them to see that it's different.
Mm-hmm.
Do you?
No.
So that's why we're going to try to explain what is Emotet and TrickBot. And we have continued to try to determine the proper pronunciation of Emotet. It could be emoted, whatever. We're going to go with Emotet.
Yeah, we'll go with that one.
The British. Okay, so these are programs. So think of it as like, I don't know, like it kind of like your Adobe PDF, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know any other way that there's nothing quite like it, or Dropbox or any of those. That's exactly, they're just programs. And when Emotet was discovered, it was back in 2014, and they were being used as banking malware to steal protected information, PII.
Right.
Individual information.
Mm-hmm.
So keep in mind that that's when they found it, though. We don't know how long it may have been out there before. And as applications do age, they get better. You know, the developers are successful. They get more money. Clearly, they're making more money. And then they're able to invest in developing the software. And this thing has gotten better and better at evading detection.
Yeah.
You know, they're taking like common stories and embedding the text into their code so that some of the things see it and think it's truly a article. You know, they're taking text from a variety of articles and just plugging it into their code so that when it's scanned, they're like, yeah, that's an article.
Yeah, that was good. Let it in.
Yeah. I mean, they're doing all kinds of amazing things. They're getting very creative. And you have to give them some respect for their ability to avoid.
Yeah.
That's some coding. That's some serious capability. And that's one of the reasons that they always want to convert the quintessential black hat hacker to a white hat hacker.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks hackers are bad. Hackers are not always the bad guys. Sometimes they're good hackers.
Mm-hmm. And it also speaks to having those multiple layers of security in place just in case.
Yes.
You know, they're able to get through one. You do want something else there that potentially could catch them or alert to something that the other ones do not.
That's why just having antivirus, we have a antivirus. And that is not going to be very helpful in that multi-layer thing.
Yep.
And the way this thing works is they use some sort of bait to get the malware loaded, either by a drive-by, an email. Sometimes that human has actually already infiltrated the network and then they load it.
Mm-hmm.
But once that thing's loaded, it gets happy.
It goes to work.
It says, I got some stuff to do. And that's where it starts delivering. There's things called payloads. Payload definition, I don't know. That makes sense to me. But how would you define a payload, David? It's
the surprise in the middle of the Tootsie Roll Tootsie Pop.
You're right. Yeah. The Tootsie Pop payload is the Tootsie Roll inside. There you go. I love it. So our Tootsie Pop is emotet, or whatever we want to call it. But this thing it is getting good. I mean, it even has, you can plug in. So once it's there, now they can talk to that thing. And they just give it programs to run because now it's out there and it's gotten noticed by everything. All the scanners think it's okay. So they're not bothered by the work that it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Then it starts doing some nasty work.
Yes, it does.
And they have a thing called a Wi-Fi spreader, which being in the country, I remember cleaning out the chicken houses and the spreaders. I'm just saying, I used to have to fill up the spreaders with, that was bad. Anyway, cleaning out chicken houses we're cleaning out the chicken house. Oh, man. Never going to be able to get stuff out of my nose. But that spreader, what it does, and this is kind of scary, right? Is it goes out and reads it says, hey, or do you have a Wi-Fi device? Well, let me turn that on if it's not turned on. And let me look for other Wi-Fi networks nearby.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that your neighbor who lives nearby, my neighbor's house is very close from my office. It's not very far away on this end of the house. My neighbor gets hit with this and it will detect the networks. And as you previously pointed out, what is the value of hiding the name?
None.
It just means that people that don't know how to do it won't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it keeps the people who are not very technical from finding it, but it doesn't keep this kind of software or hackers to find it. So it finds it and then it starts trying to get in and using all these different passwords and methods, and it detects what kind of a network. It looks for all of the standards, those kind of things, until it can find a network that it can access, and then it starts looking for everything on that network. So you didn't do anything at your house or your business, because remember, on the other side of the wall, there's another business.
Mm-hmm.
And if they have poor security, all it needs is you to have a weak login to your Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
That's it.
Which is, the funny part is that, some of these smaller practices really don't even use Wi-Fi. They just have it there for other people.
Yeah.
They're using the internet wired, and you almost have to ask, why even have Wi-Fi? I mean,
people we want our patients to have it. And,
but okay, I understand. It was a thing back in the day when most people had limited Wi-Fi plans, but now nearly everybody's on unlimited data. So it's really not that necessary anymore.
Indeed. Unless you have a device that doesn't have cellular.
Yes.
Which a lot of tablets and laptops and stuff. But the important issue here is that it's able to spread, and then it starts looking for devices that are on that network and seeing if it can get into them. And that's all happening in the background. Nobody's paying any attention.
Mm-hmm.
That's a unique way that it spreads. That's just one of the many, many things that this thing can do. And they then taught it a cool new trick because they added TrickBot. It's a nice new trick. They taught the old dog new tricks, gave it TrickBot, and TrickBot is a separate piece of malware that came out in 2016. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. It was discovered in 2016. We don't know how long it's been out.
So I have to ask.
Uh-oh. I have no idea where we're going, people.
I have to ask if the whores are turning tricks. Just wondering.
The FCC.
So the HORs are trick botting. Okay.
Yeah.
I can't let it go.
I wondered, you were waiting. You were just waiting. And because I could see, you were waiting till we got the TrickBot, weren't you?
It was just stewing. I was trying. I tried. I kept saying, don't say it.
They're doing tricks with TrickBot. But what this thing is designed to do is to accept jobs, now different ones than Emotet. Its payload is, we're going to send it Mimikatz, which is another kind of malware that's used to strip credentials from systems. Pulls usernames and passwords out of systems. No matter what you think it can be pulled, if you're not doing the right things, peace out. They got them.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a credential vault. It does all kinds of things. It looks for credentials in plain text. I mean, it does a ton of stuff that just involving credential theft that these things can do. Then you do what's called lateral movement. And
you watch football.
Yeah, they're moving down the line on their side. But this is why we talk about things like segmentation, so that everybody's in a different locked room. And I'm going to be able to go around to everybody in my locked room. But if I can find the way to get to the next locked room, I'm going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they add in things called persistence that allows them to be able to come back.
Mm-hmm.
I like the one that's Shadow IT Tools. They just stick them out there. But they basically give themselves the authority to come back. I was not surprised. It's ingenious. Some of the things, just how simple they are.
Mm-hmm.
Set a scheduled task to let me back in.
Yeah.
That's it. And if you don't go clean it up and you restore, guess what you're going to restore?
Yeah. And we talk about it all the time, that if you get hit once, chances are, this, as far as IT goes, I mean, I know there are other ways to do this, but really one of the easiest ways is if you think that you let somebody in, or you did let somebody in, whatever, then you got to start nuking the systems. There's no way to really know without, calling in the right people and spending a lot of money, what in the world they were able to do in the 10 seconds you let them in there.
And when we say nuke, we don't say wipe it and restore.
Mm-hmm.
You say wipe it and begin again.
Yep. Start afresh.
Yes. So that all is happening behind the scenes with Emotet and TrickBot. They're doing all these things. These things are running things. And one of the ways that Ryuk has been so successful is that it has used this combination where, it drops off the emotet. That does some things, allows it to spread. Then you bring in TrickBot, which is doing things that then lets us take advantage of the spread. And when I've gotten a lot of things in place, I've exfiltrated data, I've got all these logins, all of these things ready to go, then we launch the Ryuk or whatever, that final payload after we've gotten to the end. That is the ransomware or any number of other things that we intend to do with your network. And how are these things starting? How are they getting in? Well, internet-facing systems that are vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. I've got a web server. I've got SharePoint that I'm configuring myself. Whatever you want to do there. Then you got the RDP, brute force. And that is, where we just talked about last week, right? 127% increase.
Yeah. And I'm afraid a lot of people turn those things on.
Yeah, a lot. And didn't secure them. And then they won't remember to turn them off. But they're already being used. And there's probably a scheduled job to turn them back on if you turn them off.
Mm-hmm.
They have a way that they're getting in some other way now. They don't need that anymore. And then, of course, the weak application settings, which is, those are the ones where I've allowed people to run things that let them in.
Yeah. Or it's the fact that people don't understand that when you buy a new platform or a new piece of software, it might say it's secure or it might say it's HIPAA compliant, but that means you have to make sure you configure it properly.
It means it can be used in that manner.
Right. Which I see a lot, even from IT folks. I'm using this and it's HIPAA compliant. But they didn't go in and do anything to configure it.
Right. You can have software that can be used that way.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not using it that way, it's irrelevant that it can be used that way.
Yes.
But with all this in mind, we also have the fact that what we talked about, they started doing was releasing data after they pulled it.
Mm-hmm.
And you did get a kick out of this, that we do follow databreaches.net, and they do some great reporting there.
Mm-hmm.
And always not afraid to get out there and talk to the hackers to try to find out information. But we have to keep in mind that they are criminals. We're honest criminals. You can trust us. But in a recent interview, the Maze team, as the headline said, ridicules security, quote, experts and IT administrators. And this is the people that are running all of those things and exfiltrating your data and all of those things. This is, well, I'll let you cover this because you really enjoyed when you brought up what this is going to do to your people.
Yeah, my people.
They're not mine anymore. I ran away.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the most dangerous aspects of most IT folks is they often think they know everything.
Yes.
Not that that's the only profession that does that. I won't call out anymore, but anyway.
Yeah. We're in healthcare. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. But, one of the things they put out there as they discuss the experts, quote unquote experts, is that, when the so-called professionals don't, they can't tell the difference between phishing and lateral movement. And they say they don't need to use phishing attacks. And slowly move from one target to another because they have access to the hosting provider. And, as long as these so-called professionals work in IT and security, then they've got plenty of job security as criminals. So, okay. But here's another one that I thought was sadly funny.
Right. Sadly funny.
Is that this is a quote from the criminals, right? Another word for the IT specialists and network administrators who are trying to hide the information of the data leak from the company executives. You are making everything worse. We are really shocked by the fact that some network administrators are trying to hide the leak by offering us, the criminals, access to the data of other companies, access to private laptops of the company's president, and even nude photos of the boss's secretary. And then they said, funny but true. Okay, so funny, yes. But I have to ask the question, and Maze, if you want to email me and let me know, but if somebody has access to other companies' networks, then is it an IT provider?
Because they're just saying network IT specialists and network administrators, which, says a lot. And it would explain why they're trying to keep it from the company, even more so, and why they would be willing to throw the private laptop under the bus.
Yeah.
Because we're not monitoring that, but we know it's there. But they make a point. It's like, we don't really care. You can offer us the Bitcoin wallet of the company's president. Apparently they're getting those offers. Who knows? Right?
Well, they didn't say they weren't interested in the photos.
No, they didn't. They said, we're not interested in access accounts or Bitcoin wallets of the company executives. We are doing what we are doing and no other proposals are accepted. But they did leave out whether or not they were willing to take the photos.
They probably like, dude, we already have the photos. What do you mean?
I know, right?
Yeah, but interesting. They are not, we often say we don't negotiate with criminals. Well, apparently the criminals won't negotiate with us either.
Exactly. They're like, look, this is it. We're not doing anything.
Yeah.
But it is important to note that in that article, two of the victims of the Maze attacks that we know, because Maze published their data, that is MD Lab and Stockdale Radiology, were mentioned in that article, which then, of course, brings us, the other point is from the Microsoft article, they're also learning they aren't leaving. Now, we've kind of alluded to that, but let's be very clear. Even if you pay them, they aren't leaving. They aren't going away and leaving your network. And that's where it brings it to healthcare's always been a prime target, but now it's even worse because of the pandemic and all the things that they're pretty sure you're going to pay to get away with. And that brings us to another article. A Colorado hospital here at the end of April was hit by ransomware in the midst of, and Colorado's got some hot spots. This was in Pueblo, but they have on their website and we'll do a little screen crap. You know what I'm saying. We got a screen grab, and they are posting that they were hit on April 21st, and it has resulted in an outage in a number of our IT systems. They are investigating. A leading third-party forensics firm was brought in to assist, and mitigation is well underway. Now, they are doing everything they can on top of already doing everything they can. That's not good. But in this article, and this is something you and I brought out over and over and over during this. I mean, how many times have we talked about this?
A couple times.
Yeah. But there's a big company called Coalfire. They do big companies. And one of the directors there was quoted in this article about Colorado, saying business continuity and disaster recovery plans are insufficient for this crisis. The work-from-home attack vector is being exploited, and organizations without multi-factor authentication, properly configured virtual private networks, patched secure access gateways, robust network configurations, and proper training on work-from-home processes are the most vulnerable.
I agree.
Nah. But Microsoft, in their articles, they have several that came out talking about these 10 different strains and about the specific attacks on healthcare. And they make a very specific point on healthcare that I think is a great place for us to kind of tie it all together here. Is it ain't like it used to be. It's human operated ransomware we have to worry about.
Mm-hmm. Somebody's going to be in a staff meeting talking about it and just bust out laughing. All because of us.
Yeah. It's HOR.
Using trick bots.
Yeah. They turn in trick bot HOR. But okay, let me get things back together here. In the Microsoft article, their point was multiple ransomware groups have been accumulating access and maintaining persistence on target networks for several months and activated dozens of ransomware deployments in the first 2 weeks of April.
Mm-hmm.
So far, the attacks have affected 8 organizations, medical billing companies, manufacturing, transport, government institutions, and educational software providers, showing that these groups have little regard to the critical services they impact, the global crisis notwithstanding. These attacks, however, are limited to critical services, so organizations, they are not limited to critical services, so organizations should be vigilant for signs of compromise.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a great lead into what we are planning to do for next week's episode. And hopefully, if we mention it now, that'll make us do it. But we're working on the checklist of your cybersecurity concerns that we recommend you consider as your checklist anyway, for when you try to get back to whatever the new normal is.
Right. Yeah, when you go back and open the office up and you're like, wow, all these spider webs in here.
Well, it's going to be different. And there's a lot of things that we're going to need to consider, because what's happening out there now is not going to go away. And they've got enough of a foothold in other areas that even if you do clean up and maintain and protect your network, the people that are communicating with you are letting them in, and they're using those networks to attack you. So keep that in mind. We continue to stress the importance of being aware of your business partners and that potential of maybe they do know you have naked pictures on the laptop.
Yeah. The other part is everybody, rushed to buy all these mobile devices and laptops and stuff like that. And, if those have become compromised during this process, and then they're going to introduce those into the network. It could be a Y2K thing. I don't know, but it could be very bad too.
Well, it's going to be one of those things where some people did have some problems at Y2K, but we have to credit the programmers who spent endless hours writing COBOL.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun. All of our younger listeners are like, what is Y2K?
It was a thing. It was way more a thing. But, I wasn't really super worried about it. Everybody kept asking me. I'm like, nah, I think there's going to be a few things. The really only question was, to me, was how well did the power companies do?
Yeah. There's some
That
people
was my
stocking
concern.
up on stuff. I don't recall being short on toilet paper though, but People were buying.
It was probably water then, bottled.
Yeah, it's water and, just food. But I don't know where this toilet paper thing came from.
No. I don't know. There's a theory that somebody created the run on toilet paper so that people wouldn't take like all the beans and pasta. I don't know. Anyway, the important thing to note here is there is a lot going on. OCR just released an alert showing all the alerts from the FBI and all these other folks and how they're specifically targeting healthcare, but don't think that if you are not a healthcare person, you don't have to worry about it. And that's what Microsoft's point was. They're seeing it everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you pass up an opportunity?
I don't know. I'm still thinking about toilet paper. I think maybe more people are eating Mexican food than they were in Y2K.
Well, all of us hopefully have clean bums at this point, and the shortages are over, and I think it's time to let this one go, David.
Yeah, I mean, as a country, we spent $500 billion to educate people to wash your freaking hands and don't breathe on people.
And then you get people yelling in people's faces. Yep. I mean,
I'm telling you, I hope they keep the 6-foot thing permanently.
I know. I would feel so much better.
I think there should be like some kind of magnetic vest I can wear that repels people when they get too close.
I just like to be able to give permission to get close. That's it. I don't mind, but I'd like for you to wait until I tell you it's okay. But, shaking hands, that's over. I think the bows we're going to get used to, but my favorite is live long and prosper, Vulcan. Greetings. Yeah. I think that's where I'm going.
I can only do that on one hand. My other one won't do it.
Well, you need to get busy.
Yeah.
I can do it both-handed. I'm doing it right now. So just imagine me saying,
live
long and prosper, ta-ta for now.
Ta-ta for now. Throw a little Tigger reference in there. TTFN.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we trained everybody on quite a bit. Wide range of things today. We went from Tigger to the streets of Vegas to all over the place. All right, folks, that is our show for today. If you weren't entertained, you weren't listening. So make sure you follow us on your favorite social media site. Rate us on our podcasting app. Send us some ransomware. Take Donna's naked pictures and put them out there.
And we're done.
As always, you can send your questions or ideas to Donna at helpmewithhippa.com. She loves your emails. And so remember, for Donna and myself, that HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.